What is up, everybody? It is Peaceful here. We are going to be talking today about Werewolf by Night. And is Werewolf by Night worth your precious pashes or tokens or whatever it may be? So, before we get into it, I would just like to say if you enjoy my content, please make sure you are subscribed, hit that like button on the video, and comment down below if you like this style of video. Let me know what you'd like to see more of and what your thoughts on Werewolf by Night are. All this helps me out tremendously, and I really appreciate it. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into Werewolf by Night. This card is a 3 cost, 3 power that says after you play an on reveal card at another location, move there and gain 2 power. So this is a really cool card that I think is actually really powerful. And the reason being, at 1 proc, he's fine. 3/5 has proven to be a pretty solid stat line for the metagame. You don't mind playing a card that costs 3 and gets you 5 power. It's usually generally pretty good. Think of things like Polaris and Spider-Man. But those have an extra effect, right? And they can kind of mess with your opponent and what they're doing. So what do we do to make Werewolf by Night worth running over or honestly with cards like that? And you need to get at least 2 procs, which doesn't sound that hard to do. And anything past 2 procs, suddenly this card is absolutely insane on rate. We've seen Elsa, come into the metagame and be like a 2 cost, like, you know, 11, 14 power. Now she's been nerfed, so she's generally like a 2 cost 6 to 8 to 10 power. And I think Werewolf by Night can easily compete with that on rate. And there's a few different ways we do this. And I wanted to kind of go ahead and give you all some decks and show you just basically where I think he will work and in what shells. And first up, we're just going to go over what has to probably be the most obvious one to most of you, and that is just a straight up move deck, right? So here you've got Werewolf by Night in a classic move shell. The thing is, I went a little bit harder on the actual move synergies here. We're only running Human Torch, and that's mostly just for curve purposes, and then Werewolf by Night to bounce around, but we have Craven to bounce into and things like that to really maximize the potential of these move cards. And it's just really awesome synergy getting that to play on reveals, something like Iron Fist on Craven, into another on reveal on Craven that bounces it out. You can just get a bunch of value bouncing Werewolf by Night around, and then you got the Heimdall for just a really powerful lane. Generally, Heimdall decks have been very predictable, and that's why I wanted to try it in this shell with Heimdall. Is that generally, like if you look at their board and you're like, okay, they're going to go turn 6 Heimdall, you can pretty much figure out A, if you're going to win or lose, and B, where you should play your cards. And Werewolf by Night just complicates that because now you can no longer kind of count on winning the Heimdall lane, which is generally what you used to do. Now you've got this giant Werewolf by Night that's going to bounce back in there and generally give you a hard time winning that lane because instead of it being 8 power or maybe 11 power with a something like multiple man, it's going to be, who knows, upwards of 17 to or 18 to 20 power in that lane. That's pretty strong. So I thought this was a really good place to start. You'll notice that I went heavier on the move on reveal cards because that just seemed like the smart thing to do, given that Werewolf by Night triggers on reveals, not on other move cards. So we went heavy on things like Polaris, things like Spider-Man. And the nice thing about Spider-Man in particular is that, and Iron Fist and Ghost Spider for that matter, is that they can kind of clear space in other lanes so you can get more procs. Like Spider-Man himself is probably the best one. You play Spider-Man in a lane, it moves one of their cards out, moves Spider-Man out, and then you get to bounce your Werewolf by Night into that lane. That's pretty cool. I think this is probably where I will start. I don't necessarily think this is the best shell, but I do think it's going to be fun trying out. I do think Elsa is still worth running in this deck because you've got things like Silk and Werewolf by Night that you can play, and Spider-Man that you can play into a lane that's full, get that value off of Elsa, and then they bounce out, and you can just keep using that value. You notice there's no Jeff. That's honestly probably wrong. I just wanted to try out Cloak. Cloak seemed like a really cool card for Werewolf by Night, and I could be wrong. It could end up being really bad, but I wanted to try it. So we're going to have that in there. Feel free to slide. If I were going to put Jeff in here, it would probably be for Cloak. Next up, it wouldn't be a Peaceful Sea video without a Thanos deck, now would it? Not entirely true, but you get where I'm going with this. So this is a Thanos Werewolf by Night deck, and you might be thinking, well, doesn't Thanos generally use up a lot of its spot? Doesn't it kind of get clogged up on space already? How are we going to make Werewolf by Night work in Thanos? And I had the same thought. But at the same time, having all of those stones that you can use to bounce Werewolf by Night multiple times in a turn seemed like it was worth building around. So I wanted to give it a try. And what I kind of came to the conclusion was that Goblins and Werewolf by Night actually have a pretty cool synergy. There might be a shell outside of Thanos where this could work. But you play your Green Goblin. It is an on reveal card. You bounce your Werewolf by Night over there. You get to use those goblins, and you can even go full on like a junk style deck and play like Viper and stuff like that. Stuff that clears space on your side is an on reveal and just gives you Werewolf by Night procs. Seemed pretty cool to me. I decided to kind of go for it. You see we've got Craven here as well. That might also not be correct, but I decided to put Jeff and Vision in here as well to help proc that Craven as well. And I think this is actually a pretty cool shell. It's going to be a little bit different avenues of attack than you'd have in a normal Thanos deck. I do have Professor X in here still. I think it's still worth, could be wrong, but one of the cool things you can do with Professor X is once that Werewolf by Night gets to a decent size, if you're worried about Shang or Shadow King or something like that, you can just Professor X the lane the Werewolf by Night is in to to guarantee a win there, and then win another lane, with something like Vision or Hobgoblin or something like that. There's just a lot of different options. With Thanos, as always, it just gets very hard to play around Thanos in general because Thanos is such a flexible deck and has so many avenues to victory. So I thought this would be a fun thing to try. I do think the Werewolf by Night Goblin synergy is going to be, there's something there because the biggest issue I foresee with Werewolf by Night is just space on board since you can only have 4 cards at each location. So I'm excited to play around with this idea, the Goblin idea. I think it's going to be really cool. And this is the deck. So if you want to try out Thanos and Werewolf by Night, like I'm definitely excited to do, definitely give this one a try. Last up, and this is probably the one the most of you like immediately thought of when you saw Werewolf by Night, and that is Silver Surfer. So Silver Surfer obviously has synergy with Werewolf by Night, mostly because A, you have a bunch of on reveals that you already want to run, and B, you just have this powerful end game with Silver Surfer, Sarah, and that sort of thing. And Surfer's kind of fallen out of the metagame a little bit because of Mobius and Mobius. You see, I'm running him in here myself because there's a lot of decks that try and mess with stuff, playing like Wave or something like that, and you want to make sure that you have outs to that so that they can't ruin your last couple turns. But at the same time, you do have to kind of understand that sometimes your opponent's going to have Mobius, and when they have Mobius, you got to go for a different line. But I still think that Werewolf by Night is enough of a power boost to this deck that you should definitely be trying him out in this shell. This is one of the ones I'm excited to try out. So you see here, I've got a pretty basic Surfer deck. You got Magic for when people have, Sarah to mess up your late game turns. I've got Werewolf by Night with Killmonger, Juggernaut, Maximus, Absorbing Man, Silver Surfer, Storm, all these cards synergize with Werewolf by Night, make him really large, make him really strong, and makes it very, very easy to get, just a huge Werewolf by Night, which can almost solo lane by yourself, which can be one of the things that Surfer can struggle with is getting tall enough in multiple lanes in case your Storm lane doesn't work out. So I think Werewolf by Night will definitely help with that. I think he's a very powerful card. I'm excited to see if he will end up working out in a Surfer shell. So those are the 3 decks that I have for you today. I wanted to give you all to try out when you unlock Werewolf by Night tomorrow, if you unlock Werewolf by Night tomorrow. As far as what I think, I definitely think Werewolf by Night is going to be a powerful card. I definitely think it's worth picking up if you have the synergy and enjoy the style of decks that he's going to go in, which I've kind of listed here. So let me know in the comments what you think. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I'll catch you later. Bye.